Today we're in the studio for part 4 of our 4-hour wedding photography workshop. Taylor Jackson.
Shooting 67 weddings last year.
Taylor Jackson, welcome.
So Taylor, you are well known in this community. You're an amazing photographer.
On YouTube, and then the next videos, these ones are all going to be on Patreon. So if you want to, I don't know, learn any of these things, feel free to hop over there. Basically, I guess the situation is that if everyone started using these tactics right now in your local area, they would all become ineffective. So I locked them down behind Patreon. So only like maybe use yourself locally, or maybe like 1 or 2 other people if you're in a bigger city, start using things like that. So yeah, all these videos, 10K Instagram, and specifically Instagram and Facebook ads, and kind of what everyone's doing wrong right now, as well as my updated version of becoming a preferred vendor and all those other things. All right, on to the video. So how to make $100,000 as a wedding photographer. If you do 30 weddings per year at $3,300, roughly, I guess 33, dot, 33, you make $100,000. That doesn't seem outlandish. That seems totally reasonable that you could shoot easily 30 weddings probably this year. You're not gonna, if this is your first year into it, you're probably not gonna start at $3,300, but that is a very reasonable goal. If you live in at least a slightly larger city, or you live anywhere near a larger city, or you want to travel for weddings, that this is a totally reasonable and attainable goal. And I know that there's lots of, the little dot down there is that there are back-end costs, but for the most part, you can really minimize them. And if you're shooting 30 weddings a year, you can pretty easily probably just process everything in-house. You don't have to outsource anything. That you have to buy cameras and gear, but at the same time, you don't have to go out and buy like $15,000 in camera gear. You can simply get through with, especially if you're doing photo, that you can get through with stuff that was great and is still great a couple of years ago. So I'm going to say, like, even moving back to like the D750, I'm totally happy to shoot that camera still. And that is a camera that came out over 5 years ago now. So to worry about like getting the latest and greatest, you don't really need to do that. A lot of the good lenses, if you're fine with shooting digital SLR, or if you want to just go to something like a Sony A7 III, shooting those cameras and those lenses, that you can find some kind of cheaper versions of the things that, like, you could get the 1.4, but maybe for the first year you're fine with the 1.8, and you can save some money that way. So while there are back-end costs, I would say we do, as wedding photographers, really live in a profit-rich environment, and one without a lot of very specific costs. Like if I was to open any sort of shop, like a bakery or a restaurant or something, like I would have hundreds of thousands of dollars of back-end stuff that I would have to deal with. Plus, I would still have to be trying to sell things and make profit on every single individual item. Whereas if you're running a wedding photography business, specifically one that we'll talk to a little bit over this, a volume-centric wedding photography business, you're able to do a lot for not a whole lot of money. And the more weddings you shoot, the cheaper overall it comes to outsource everything as well. That if you have somebody either that'll actually come in and sit and edit your images, or you go with one of the unlimited subscription services that are out there, a bunch of the bigger companies all use them, or that you can use a subscription service. So it's like $199 a month for unlimited editing, which is what I use. And the more weddings you shoot, that $199 doesn't go up, that stays the same. So that's a very fixed cost, which is awesome. So there's not a lot of back-end costs, I don't think. That you still have medical, you still have, or I guess if you live in the States, you have medical, and like there's a lot of smaller costs, but for the most part, we live in a pretty profit-rich environment. So don't let the back-end costs scare you away too much. Also, I guess like one thing, this might be out of scope of this video, but if you are a sole proprietor, small business, it probably makes sense at some point, especially if you're shooting 30 weddings a year, to go incorporated. Tax savings, tax-wise, you'll just save a heck of a lot of money. So by going to something that's an incorporation or an LLC or whatever it might be, wherever you live, you have a lot more tax benefits, and you'll save a lot of money at the end of the year, especially under the current administration, because I guess things have been changed a little bit to really prefer anybody that makes a good amount of money. And then in Canada, we're getting a lot of trickle down of that as well. So I would much rather pay something like, I think for small business and corporations in Canada, I think the tax rate is 12% or something like that. It's pretty minimal, 12-14%. It's pretty small, but if you were just taking that all as like your personal earnings, you might be paying somewhere up like 30 to 45%, depending on how everything goes down. So I'd rather take the small, I guess, tax rate. I think the most important thing when you decide that you want to be a wedding photographer, or you decide that you want to go for those 30 weddings and you want to book those that $100,000 worth of work, is to prove first that you can actually book work. I think that this is something that's very much overlooked. I spoke to this in a video a couple days ago on Face or on YouTube. And basically it's that like you have to prove that people actually want to book you and that they actually want to hire you before you like just start this business. And you don't have to go through all the steps of starting a business and coming up with everything that you need to if you're not actually booking any work. So figure out if you actually can book, if you can actually generate business and revenue what you're doing. Otherwise you can kind of refocus, and there's lots of different avenues in photography. And if weddings are just simply impossible in your town because there's a studio that, if there's like 15 studios that are all amazing and they're all doing exactly what you want to be doing, how do you compete with that? And if the only answer is to compete on price, it might make sense to just find something else temporarily to do some commercial work or to do some branding sessions or headshots or whatever it might be. So first up, prove that you can actually book work. And how I did that was I simply just went and took stock of everyone that was in my local area. And I was like, these people are all priced here. I would say that I'm roughly similar to some of them, and then I just priced below them in the beginning. And every single wedding that I would book, I would just step my booking price up by like $150, $200. And I basically just kind of built a business based on that at the very beginning, I wanted to get work, that I was very hungry. I was able, like, I wanted to work. I would rather shoot a wedding. Looking back, I should have paid people to shoot their weddings, which I know is a terrible business suggestion, but to build portfolio and to build experience, like, I just wanted to work way more than I was actually working. So that caused me to go on things like Kijiji and find free weddings and offer my services for free, and to go and shoot things for people that didn't care about me, that would even, like in one case specifically, like they actually booked a second photography team, which was in retrospect kind of awesome because I just got to second shoot the day and they took all the liability of the day. And I just got to shoot for my portfolio pretty much, which is kind of what I was there for, was that when you're shooting a wedding for free, you're there selfishly, that it's not, they're getting a free photographer, but you're there to build your portfolio. So in the beginning, that's what I did. And then as I started booking work based on my portfolio, the portfolio that I was generating for myself, that I was actively creating, because that's the most important thing, get to that a little bit more in one of the next videos, that I was actively creating these videos, or actively creating this portfolio that I wanted to actually be shooting. And then at some point it gains enough traction that it starts getting those ideal couples to actually contact you and to actually book you. And at that point, your wedding photography business really just kind of takes on a life of its own and kind of brings you along for the ride a little bit, rather than you just struggling every single day. So I stepped up my pricing every single wedding by just a couple $100. And it was also gauged, I guess, that I was very versatile, we'll call it, that if I got an inquiry and it was for a venue that I knew if I shot a wedding there that I could market like the crap out of everything, that I would basically like take that wedding and do an amazing job of it, but also go in there and shoot it knowing that this was going to be my marketing material, that I wanted to shoot more weddings here. So I would kind of take that into account. So my pricing, I would come up with custom packages that wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense, but people were pretty happy to book. All the marketing ideas that I have are all coming up in the Patreon section. That's going to be, it'll be released officially in March. So don't sign up right now, but if you are watching the videos, not the live stream, that they should be out by the time you're actually seeing this video. So yeah, focus on booking work where and when it's possible is number one for me. And I don't think I realized this at the very beginning, so it's very important. Volume versus luxury. I think that a lot of the educational material out there right now is that you have to either be a luxury business and you have to be like that boutique studio, or you have to be a volume-based business and have a very low price point and to like just, I guess, shoot a lot of weddings for no money. I think that you can do both. I think that nobody's really spoken to this a whole lot online, at least that I've ever seen. I think that you can very easily do both, that you can be a luxury service provider, but also shoot a lot of volume. And that all comes down to stuff we'll talk about in Patreon, but it is pretty much just about making those venue and vendor relationships as solid as you can, and knowing how to book them money, because if you're booking other people money, they are going to look a lot happier upon you in order to, I don't know, like if they're putting together, like a venue is putting together their suggested vendors and there's 5 people on the list and you are the only photographer that has booked that venue weddings because of the marketing material you've generated for them, and maybe you've done a promotional video for the venue or whatever it might be. If you are the one that's booking them work, if the general manager sees that you are the one that like is actually contributing to the bottom line cost and not just giving them Instagram images, they're probably going to rank you number one, or they're probably going to tell their sales staff, or their sales staff might just organically like you and know about you more and better and promote you above everyone else. So it's step one to even get in the door, step two to get on the preferred list, but that still doesn't mean that you're just going to have an abundance of work. But step three is that if you're able to just get everybody as your personal advocate, that's when you really start booking a lot of work. I'm going to talk a little bit about a silly thing that I did a couple years ago. This was in, I think 2018. 2018. Let's call it 2018, Tim. No? It was before that? 2016. Tim says this was 2016. I thought it was 2018. Time's just going so fast. 15? Yes. Yeah. So I did a time-sensitive holiday family session special. I was like, I'm going to sell some holiday sessions this year. It's December. I'm not making a whole lot of money. I don't see when I'm like, I look at my calendar. I'm not really making any money until like May. So I went really hard on the 2 days before Christmas here. And I ended up selling 111 gift certificates for family sessions 2 days before Christmas, which is a lot. So you can price them out whatever you want, but basically what I did was like a time sensitive offer that it's available this day only. And if you want to book, if you want a gift for your mom that you haven't bought yet, if you want whatever gift for whoever, that here is your one-step solution. I'll send you the gift certificate over email, like as soon as you pay, and you'll have that gift for somebody that's actually going to be awesome. So within pretty much like a day and a half, I made $41,625. And that is a significant amount of money to make in one day. There are methods to really kind of doing and creating a business that isn't necessarily only weddings, but all types of portrait and all types of commercial. And you don't have to publicly tell everybody that like, hey, I do these. Because if you look anywhere online, you'll never see really anywhere, with the exception of promotions, that I do family portrait sessions because I only do them once a year. And because of that time pressure, they sell really well whenever I do launch one. So I made a video like kind of leading up to the day and just getting people excited and to know like at 9 a.m. that there's only, I think I said 100 available. And within a couple of hours, it was just like kind of like absolutely exploded. So it was definitely a very positive thing, and definitely taught me that time sensitive sales are kind of the way to book more and more photography work. If you want to book work that, if you're just available for portrait and wedding sessions, that's great. But if you have a time sensitive offer, you have a lot more, I guess, leverage overall about getting people to act quickly and to book things. So figure out what people need and put that in front of them and make it super, super easy. There are lots of ways to structure sales. So, like if you're a wedding or a portrait shooter, you might think that $375 is a little bit low for a session. If like you're giving away all the images and you're not doing like a sales session, you're not getting like the back end sales, that there's lots of different ways to structure sales. So whatever kind of works the best for you. I like the idea of just having that one upfront price, making a very quick and easy, simple way to understand it, not selling packages and just kind of like going out, here's the files. That makes me the happiest. But if you're somebody that wants to have a studio, you want the family to come in and sit down and view their images on a big screen that you have control over the color, that's awesome. There's a lot of money to be made in that. I know a lot of family photographers and couples photographers that are probably making more than I make on a wedding in a single family session, and you can shoot that family session on a Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday or all of the above. There's a few of them in town here, and there are a lot all around the States that do very, very exceptionally well as far as like after sales go. And I would say that some of them are in the ballpark of like $5,000 to $6,000 to $7,000 total for actual after sales, maybe even more in some certain markets. But there are different ways to build your business, and if you're trying to book them and they're just not happening yet, that there are different ways you can generate revenue while you wait. My goals overall have always been and will always be mostly time freedom. I want to be able to go out and travel and do whatever I kind of want to do at the time. So if I'm doing that, I'm pretty happy with my business. So time freedom and business happiness overall is what I look for the most. So everything in my business, as you've heard, is really all geared towards happiness. Selling 111 family gift certificates in one day, that sounds awesome at the time, but then you have to find a slot. Not all of them come back, so I guess that's a positive. But most of them, I would say, originally like only 30 came back, I think the first half of the year, and then my September, October was just like everything just came back. So business-wise, great to have made money. End of the year, really stressful to be, one, in prime wedding season, and then two, trying to get like 80 family sessions done. notice that that does not contribute to my life happiness, my time freedom, or my business happiness overall. So that is not a session or not a sale that I've done again since then. And if I do it, I keep it actually controlled. So I'll really, when I say there's only 15 available, there literally only are 15 available. And they usually, I would say, sell out within maybe 20 minutes maximum, because people are like ready and waiting to actually book things if I'm releasing such a smaller version of them. And at that point, you can also kind of play the balance of pricing up versus, I don't know, like you have to find that line, and it's always a moving line, and it's a moving line every single year. So yeah, those are my suggestions, how to make 100K as a wedding photographer, but also by supplementing by other things if wedding photography just simply isn't working. All right, to the phones, Tim. Do you got some questions?
We do. This one's from last time. I forgot to get to it. Stacey Jordan asks.
Stacey Jordan asks.
Any tips on how to do a Catholic wedding? They tend to be an hour plus, and sometimes the priest won't let you close to the altar.
Yes, Catholic weddings. So I have struggled maybe 3 times and 1 Mennonite wedding where I have not been allowed to take photos actually in the actual church. So I wasn't able to go in the actual space to take any photos. There have been alternate versions of this where sometimes I'm allowed only to take photos of the processional and the recessional, and then I have to sit for the entire mass. That's totally fine. It's all out of your control. The couple will know prior to this happening that it's not going to be a surprise on the day that there's like no photos to be taken during the ceremony. They will know that something's happened probably in the late 90s where a photographer got really out of hand and ruined it for everyone else that will ever take photos at that church. And until that pastor or reverend or whoever it might be passes his torch to the next person, that's probably going to be the way that it is, and there's really nothing you can do to argue your way out of it. I think by being nice, dressing well, and just like showing up and being a nice, kind person, and going up and meeting them and shaking their hand, I feel like that's like a big step as well. That if you're nice to them, sometimes you get kindness in return. Sometimes you just get stone cold, like no photos, by the way, which is something that hopefully you will know. And if you do end up there, you can grab some photos from the back if they're fine with that. Or sometimes one of the workarounds that I've discovered is that if you're doing video, you're allowed to video the ceremony, but you're not allowed to do photos. So you can just turn your camera on silent and just put it on a tripod or whatever and just be recording video and be taking photos, but you most of the time can't move from that spot. So maybe that's a workaround, maybe that's a tip, but yeah, hopefully you know that before you actually get to the ceremony. And if not, like that just kind of, it is what it is, and the couple should know that. All right, next question, Tim.
Russell Wright.
Russell Wright.
Do you think the Nikon D4S is still a relevant camera for weddings?
Do I think the Nikon D4S is still a relevant camera for weddings? Yes, I'm trying to think. I shot a wedding with my friend Dave this year. I have a friend Dave. Tim has 25 friends named Dave. And I think he was on a D4S, and I prefer the color palette off the D4S to my current Nikon D850 and my current D780. The colors and the way that my presets affected the colors, everything felt better. So I think it's totally reasonable if you're not shooting video, like by all means, that's still a totally professional and great body. I feel like that's, again, the reason why camera sales are kind of down across the board is because anything that came out 5-10 years ago, or probably even almost 10 years ago, is still like great for photos, especially if you're outside or if you have good light or if you bring in strobes to kind of supplement where you understand that you just can't go above a certain ISO. So just be conscious of ISO, but I think that's totally fine. I think it's a great camera. All right, back to Tim.
A lot of people have been asking this, and maybe you're going to cover it later, but who do you outsource your editing to?
Who do I outsource my editing to? I've used a lot of companies. So I started with Shoot.edit a long time ago, and they were great technically. I really enjoyed the images that came back. My issue, and I don't know if this has changed, this might have changed since, was that as a hybrid shooter, if I took the lead video role, my image spread, I would rely more on my second photographer to capture a lot of images. And they had a very hard policy. I think it was like that I had to shoot 70% of the images. And if I did not shoot 70% of the images, they would kick that job back. And that happened, I'm going to say, every other week for a long period of time. And I went through to fix the spread. I just included frames that I wasn't even going to deliver to the couple. So just like black frames or whatever at the start to make the ratio makes sense, even though I'm making them edit stuff that I'm just going to delete. But that was my workaround. I, at some point, found that was just really dumb. So I found another company, actually found another standalone editor, and I shipped her drives, and she was awesome. But the logistics of just shipping something physically is kind of quite annoying. After that, I went to a company called Evolve, and it was a rocky startup process, but it's there now. So in the past, I've been like try them out and see if they fit your style, but they've been good for me this year. Lindsay currently uses Photographer's Edit, and they are fantastic. Image Salon, also out of Quebec in Canada, like also absolutely phenomenal. That I would say my images, they come back and there's something always a little bit wrong. But it's globally wrong. So it's like everything is either a little bit too exposed, and I can just do a global edit to bring everything down, or it's a little too blue, and I can just increase white balance and make it a little bit warmer to balance things around that way. Lindsay's images from Photographer's Edit all come back like bang on. Image Salon processes for a lot of the companies that you would recognize as probably like the best in the world, and they are also fantastic. But Photographer's Edit and Image Salon come with a little bit more of a price tag. So as a volume shooter, I will just kind of go through everything after they've edited everything and work that out. All right, next question, Tim.
Good question. Great answer, Taylor. Zexel1 has a question. What's the best value marketing when first starting out? When you already have a portfolio, where should they invest their money in marketing?
All right. So best marketing when you're just starting out and you have a portfolio. So you're very fortunate to have that. I would say best strategy would be to create actual helpful documents and tips to help people plan their wedding and to get that in front of them. And right now, at least locally, the best value that I'm seeing, and also the least saturated, specifically targeting wedding photographers, is probably Instagram swipe up ads. I would say that's like the easiest way to get in front of people right now. I know pretty much all of my clients are on Instagram. I would say maybe 50% of them are on Facebook now. So if I can hit them with swipe ups and actually deliver value to them, I think that's kind of the best case scenario. So always deliver value, and don't just send people to your website to be like, hey, check out my work. Send them to something that can actually help them. And hopefully at that point, you'll at least create some sort of rapport, or they'll at least stick around your website a little bit longer. All right, back to the phones, Tim.
That's all we got for now.
That's all we got. All right. Going on to, I told Tim this was going to be 4 hours total.
Jesus Christ.
It might be.
Two more to go?
Yeah, there's a few more to go. We got a few more videos, Tim. Tim's excited. I can see it in his eyes. He's going to make another taco.